you know you can't trust this president to do what's right for this country. You can trust he will do what's right for Donald Trump.
Adam Schiff making his primetime case against the president last night. It's a point now really being made in extensive detail in a brand new book, Unmaking the Presidency, Donald Trump's War on the World's Most Powerful Office. And joining me now is the co-author of that book, Susan Hennessey. Susan, always great to have you here. You, of course, are part of the CNN family. It was almost as if Adam Schiff was reading from your book last night, because what he was doing is making the case in prime time that Donald Trump is breaking the presidency. And that's what you write. Why is that important?
Yeah, I mean, look, what we're trying to make the case in this book, and I think the case that the House managers are trying to make on the Senate floor right now, is this idea that Donald Trump has taken the powers of the American presidency and fundamentally altered them, not by abusing or trying to sort of, extend the edges of executive power, but really by abusing the core powers, by using them not for the public interest, not for the public good, but for his own political purposes. So in the last segment, or 2 segments ago, we heard Josh Rogan talking about all the times that the Obama administration held aid for strategic national interests. And so this is yet another example, and there are many dozens and dozens of them, of Donald Trump using the powers of his office not to, not to work on behalf of the nation, but instead to benefit himself politically, because unlike prior presidents, he doesn't appear to have a conception of the office as being distinct from himself.
You write, most of all, Trump proposes a presidency that elevates the expressive and personal dimensions of the office over everything else. It is one in which the institutional office and the personality of its occupant are almost entirely merged in their interests, in their impulses, in their finances, and in their public character. That's an argument specifically about Donald Trump, but a lot of this is specifically about the president. Where I find this book the most compelling, though, is where you raise really important issues about the presidency. And the friends that I have remaining in life, basically just my wife, will tell you I've been obsessed over the last couple of years with the fact that what Donald Trump has forced us to address is how much of the presidency is truly governed by laws and rules, and how much has been governed by custom and norms. And the answer, and you address this at length, it's really just by norms. It's really because presidents have chosen to act a certain way. And if a president, for whatever reason, chooses to act in a different way, a way that many seem to be that crosses a line, there's virtually nothing to stop him.
Yeah, I think that's what Americans are learning in real time. The American executive is an astonishingly powerful office. It really is the most powerful office in the democratic world, and not just because we're the United States of America, but because we have a more empowered executive than other countries do. And the way that we place constraints, yes, there are constitutional constraints and legal constraints, but those really are quite broad. What we do is we expect presidents to behave a certain way, to observe particular norms in order to be perceived as legitimate, in order to avoid getting impeached, in order to convince courts to sign off on what they do, or in order to convince executive branch officers to actually carry out their will and not contradict them. And one thing we've seen it again and again with this president is he doesn't appear all that interested in actually doing the job of the president, the kind of ordinary management and policy functions that normal presidents want to do. Instead, because his sort of vision of this office is really just to kind of express himself, to say the things he wants to say and to be perceived in a certain way, he doesn't seem to be as bothered whenever the fact that the way he uses this office really is strains and fractures the ordinary function of government.
One of the things you write about is that over time, Congress and the country has ceded responsibility for investigating and oversight of the executive branch of government to the executive branch of government, asking it to investigate itself. And when the president doesn't want to cooperate with that, it turns out he just doesn't have to.
Yeah, so this is one idea we try and take really seriously. Donald Trump is not the first president to breach norms, and he's not the first president to do a lot of the things that seem so alarming and so shocking. In some ways, he's a completion of a trend that's been going on for a long time in a lot of different contexts. And one is this idea of investigating the president. Congress, that's Congress's responsibility, Congress's job, and they've been handing that over to the executive branch for decades, years and years and years, before Donald Trump came along. And we saw it, and basically what that does is that you're trusting the president to investigate himself and to not interfere in an investigation. that didn't work out so well. And there's reasons why, having things like special counsels and special prosecutors only work when presidents decide to respect those sort of limits. What we're seeing here with this Ukraine scandal is Congress, for the first time, actually doing its job at investigating the president itself.
You say they've trusted the president to carry a Fabergé egg. And the question is whether he's carrying it as delicately as he needs to. Susan Hennessey, the book Unmaking the Presidency, it's a terrific read. It raises important questions, really, like I said, about the presidency itself. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you.